Hi, I'm Caleb Giddings from Gun Nuts Media, and today's video we're going to be talking about my 5 biggest pet peeves that I encounter working in the firearms industry. These are mostly sayings, things that I hear from people, things that I read in comments, and they just get under my skin. And so without further delay, here they are. Number 5, I've been shooting for 20 years. You always hear this one when somebody is trying to create an appeal to their authority as a subject matter expert in whatever it is you're talking about. A lot of times I'll see it like someone will say, well, I've been carrying a gun for 20 years and I've never felt the need to have a round in the chamber. More on that later. And what they're basically saying is that they've been doing one thing wrong for 20 years. Just because you've been doing something for X amount of time doesn't mean that you've been doing it right, and it doesn't mean that standards and practices haven't changed in the meantime. For example, this used to be how we shot handguns. We don't teach people the FBI crouch anymore. So if you came to me and said, I've been shooting the FBI crouch for 20 years, I would say, why? Things have gotten better since then. So, just because you've been doing something for 20 years does not mean you've been frickin' doing it right. Number 4, my gun has been flawless for blah 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 rounds. You're a liar. Maybe not an intentional liar, but you probably don't actually know how many rounds you've shot through your gun, if you're saying that. It's always presented in the context of someone says that brand XYZ Taurus is unreliable, and then someone responds with, well, I've shot 5,000 rounds through my Taurus with no failures. No, you haven't. You're lying. You may be lying on purpose to defend this brand that you've decided to get emotionally involved with, but what's far more likely is that you've grossly overestimated the amount of rounds that you actually fired. Competition shooters, reloaders, people like that, they track their rounds. They know within a pretty reasonable number what they've actually fired. Most other people, they go to the range once every 2 months, they buy, 3 boxes of ammo, they shoot 150 rounds, and that's a big range trip for them. And oh boy, and then they do that a couple of times, and they've now shot 450 rounds, maybe through 7 different guns, but all those numbers just sort of get jumbled up together. It's like that fish your uncle caught when you were 11, and how it's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger every time he tells the story about it. It started off as a good-sized, respectable smallmouth bass, and now all of a sudden, it's a fucking whale! People do that with their round counts, too. A box of 50 rounds turns into 5,000 rounds real fast on the internet. Number 3. This gun shoots so smooth. My hatred of this phrase is a little bit irrational, but it's just one of those things that drives me bonkers. And I can't really explain it other than the fact that when you shoot a gun, you're holding a piece of steel and polymer or aluminum and whatever out in front of your face and setting off an explosion. There's nothing smooth about that process. You could even use the word smooth correctly to talk about some of the aspects of shooting a gun. The trigger pull is very smooth. The slide moves very smooth on the rails. All of these things would be appropriate uses of the word smooth with regard to the gun, but saying that this gun shoots smooth is completely meaningless. What is smooth about setting off a frickin' explosion, recovering from recoil, and then setting off another friggin' explosion? Nothing. Your gun doesn't shoot smooth. You could say it shoots flat. You could say that the front sight tracks flat in recoil. You could say, like I said, the trigger pull is smooth. You could even say that the metal finish is nice and smooth. But the gun doesn't fucking shoot smooth. Stop! Number 2. I carry my gun on my hip. That phrase is technically correct if you utilize strong side IWB or OWB carry. You do carry your gun in the vicinity of your hip. But that's not why this phrase bugs me. The reason why this phrase bugs me is the only people who I've ever heard saying it who aren't actual cowboys are people who are fundamentally unserious about shooting and concealed carry. If you drew a Venn diagram of people who say that they carry their gun on their hip and people who suck at shooting, it would be a fucking circle. It would just overlap. And that's the problem, is you run into these people and they have this cowboy, my CCW permit is a junior G-man badge mindset about everything, but I got my gun on my hip, I'm ready. You're not ready because you're bad at shooting and your situational awareness is crap and you're probably 100 pounds overweight. But yeah, you're right, you've got that gun on your hip, idiot. And last but not least, number 1, my greatest pet peeve, chamber empty carry. I talked about this a little bit on the primary and secondary modcast the other night, but this is the hill I am going to die on. Chamber empty carry is a terrible idea. And the only people who advocate for chamber empty carry are people who are uncomfortable and unfamiliar with their weapon system and poorly trained. Poorly trained. If you're not comfortable carrying your gun with a round in the chamber, what that tells me is you lack the necessary training to carry a gun. Period. Alright? The Israelis don't even do it anymore. If you go to Israel, they're serious people who are supposed to shoot bad guys in the face. They got a round in the chamber. Alright? Stop with the chamber empty carry. You're not faster. You can't bring the gun into play if one of your hands is tied up. And it's just not... It's a stupid way to carry a gun. It is the worst way to carry a gun. You would be better off not carrying the gun and spending the time and money that you spent on getting that gun, taking a class in managing unknown contacts or learning jiu-jitsu. You would be better off, all right? If you are not comfortable carrying your gun with a round in the chamber, that means you're not comfortable enough to carry your gun. That's really what it comes down to, and you should stop pretending that you are and that chamber empty carry is somehow a viable method. Just because you saw a video of some idiot where he starts with his hand on his holstered pistol, whips it out, racks the slide, and fires a shot, and doesn't have a shot timer and doesn't show the effect on the target, does not mean that chamber empty carry is a viable form of carry. It's just not. Knock it off. If you're really, really uncomfortable about chamber empty carry and you want to carry a firearm that is really, really safe, get a revolver, okay? You put 6 rounds in the cylinder, it's got a transfer bar, so there's no way the firing pin can impact the primer unless the trigger is pulled. Get a revolver. That way you'll at least have a gun that's worth a crap instead of a paperweight with no round ready to go. Chamber empty carry is still stupid. I'm Caleb Giddings. Until next time, run your gun and your mouth.